The alien's pulse spiked when the human walked in, truth closing in. The air smelled faintly of minerals and a flower she did not know. Machines hummed in a low, friendly way. For a moment she had the strange feeling of stepping into a place that had been waiting for her for a long time. She kept her hands visible and her smile small. Diplomacy had rules, and she had learned them the hard way. The human delegation that had reached the distant system was small: 2 diplomats, 1 cultural officer, and Alara herself as the commander. They carried gifts of simple things: books, recorded music, and a small woven cloth stained with the colors of Earth. The aliens of the research station had accepted the meeting. The invitation had been formal and exact, leaving no room for error. That was how the aliens liked things. At the entrance, a group of aliens met them. They were tall and slim, covered in a pale skin that shimmered like wet stone. Their faces were not like human faces. They had larger eyes, narrow mouths, and small, mobile ridges at the sides of their heads. They moved in silence, but the station's sensors made their presence felt. Small readouts projected on the air around them: numbers, graphs, symbols that Alara could not read. The aliens did not touch her, but their eyes lingered. When Alara stepped forward, one of the aliens, whose name she would learn as Tikra, tilted his head. The readouts around him changed. A thin, translucent band pulsed once, then twice. Someone in the delegation whispered and pointed to the cuff of their sleeve, where a simple display blinked. The alien's pulse had spiked. It was a small thing to human eyes, an internal flag on an alien console, but inside the station that small spike made people move. Alara felt the attention like a soft current on her skin. She could hear the hum of their life support, the soft rasps of air being scrubbed. The alien staff began to consult screens behind their hands. Tikra did not show surprise. He only watched her with those big, dark eyes, as if he were trying to read a sentence in a book he did not yet know how to open. They walked through the central gallery. The human cultural officer offered the woven cloth and a recording. Tikra accepted with both hands, examined the weft, then set the recording to a bedside player. Music filled the gallery, simple, a string of human voices and wind. The alien staff listened, but their faces did not change. Yet the sensors did. Tiny lights blinked faster, and the pulsing band near Tikra flickered again. Someone made a note on a thin slate. Alara had been told in training about alien physiology. She had studied charts and read reports, but those were maps and lists. Reality was different. The station's machines were tuned to detect subtle things: hormone shifts, tiny electrical changes, patterns in breath and stance. The aliens had refined those readings. Their systems could take a living being and reduce its actions to probabilities. A person could be read like a string of numbers, mapped and projected, and the next move predicted. It was a feeling like being examined by 1,000 eyes at once. The delegation passed doors that sealed with a satisfying clap. Glittering towers and lab bays crowded the inner ring. Scientists moved between glass rooms. The walls were layered with screens that showed blueprints, star charts, and models of living tissue. The aliens' technology was elegant and efficient. It worked with patterns and probabilities, predicting needs before they were spoken. For centuries, across many systems, such a gift had been their greatest advantage. They planned, and the universe bent along their line of planning. Alara noticed labels on some doors that read restricted: predictive systems and active research, behavioral resonance. The words meant little to her at first, but the language tone meant more. There were things the station did not want guests to see. That made her curious. Curiosity had always been a useful trait for humans, mixing risk and reward into a shape that suited their kind. They were taken to a meeting chamber carved from a single, seamless alloy. The room had a low table and chairs that fit the alien shapes. Tikra sat opposite Alara. He was polite and formal, speaking through a device that translated his sounds into clear English. His voice was soft yet precise. The translator noted the slight modulation in his vowels and gave Alara an exact copy of what he said. "Commander Vance," Tikra said, "we are grateful for your visit. Our station is open to exchange and knowledge." Alara bowed slightly. "We are grateful for your welcome. We come from a crowded world. We bring stories and questions." Tikra made a tiny motion of agreement, but the readout still showed odd patterns. The band near him fluttered every time she moved a hand or changed her expression. For the aliens, such a reaction was a deviation. Their systems liked clean lines. Predictability made things safer. Humans did not follow clean lines. Alara's gestures were small, but in the station's language they caused ripples. After minutes of courteous talk, Tikra asked for a private exchange. He led them to a smaller chamber, where a bank of instruments lit up like a calm storm. The room smelled of metal warmed and new paper. Tikra gestured for Alara to stand before a slender pillar. A panel descended and scanned her, no intrusive touch, only light and a hum. The scanner recorded her vitals, a map of electrical flow across her face and neck, a chart of breath and heartbeat. Alara felt a cool finger of anxiety. She had been scanned before. This was different. The machine produced strings of data across a floating screen. Symbols she did not know turned into words on the translator. Resonant patterns, it read, unstable probability vector. The words were gentle, their meaning was not. Tikra's staff looked at the screen and their ridge muscles tightened. "You will not be surprised to learn that we model behavior," Tikra said quietly. "We calculate the likelihood of actions. We map responses. With accuracy, we can avoid conflict, choose the best outcome." Alara nodded slowly. "That is wise." "And yet," Tikra continued, and his voice had the smallest shift like a note telling of a hidden chord, "the model shows a noise. Your resonance, your species, introduces variables we cannot reduce." "Noise?" Alara asked. The word felt like a small gate opening. Tikra did not smile. He tapped the screen and new lines unfurled. Graphs bent and then refused to smooth. The human translator pulsed as it rendered the alien syllables. "It is recognition," he said finally. "Not fear, not threat. Recognition, a pattern from the past perhaps. When you enter, something in our data behaves as though a memory is woken. Pulse spikes. Systems record anomalies. We have seen this before across old reports, but not with your kind." Alara's skin prickled. Memory. The station had records stretching back centuries, they had told her. If something in their records recognized humans, it meant a history. Humans had not been to all corners of the galaxy. They had not left many traces. Yet here was a system that remembered. She felt for the small recorder on her lapel and touched it as if it could hold answers. Tikra opened a drawer and took out a thin disk. He placed it in the table. Images spilled up into the air. Maps, star routes, a shadowed figure drawn by a machine that could not form a face. They were not human pictures, not wholly. The images showed patterns crossing a planet's surface, lines of light and heat. The translator gave labels: beacon arrays, behavioral imprinting, signal resonance. "You see," Tikra said, "we encountered this signature on a remote world 300 cycles ago. We believed it to be a natural phenomenon, amplified by local life. We cataloged it but did not fully understand. Later, when we began to expand our models, we realized that certain species, rare, cause our systems to shift. Their biology introduces new frequencies, a pulse, anomalies." Alara watched the images. There was a map of a small planet, one that matched nothing in her charts. The lines on that map looked like the threads in the woven cloth she had brought. Her throat tightened when she realized why. "You knew of this phenomenon," she said, choosing her words with care. "And yet you invited us." Tikra's eyes narrowed, that small ridge moving as if to point to a deeper thought. "Invitations are not always benign. They are tests. We invite to learn. Your species has reached beyond its system. We wish to confirm our models. We wish to know whether your resonance would interfere. The word interfere hung between them. It was not a threat, but it was not comfort either. Alara thought of Earth, crowded cities, sudden storms, improvisations that saved lives. Humans had no gift for precise prediction. They had a different kind of strength. She had seen it on battlefields and in quiet hospitals, the way a human could choose a path in the noise. Tikra stood and moved to a glass wall. Outside, the starfield rolled by in slow motion. A tiny dot glowed where the station watched the planet below. The alien traced the dot with a thin finger, and the image on the glass shifted to show a world covered in pale blue and green. It was not the home of humans. Yet Alara felt a pull at something inside her she did not fully name. We wish to study, Tikra said, turning slowly, to know how such resonance might be managed, because if a species can change our models, then our future plans must change too. Alara felt the air tighten. And what do you plan, Tikra? Management or control? His expression did not enter into human shapes easily, but she read the answer anyway. Control is a word that implies force. We prefer direction. We prefer outcomes that minimize harm. But your presence causes outcomes we cannot predict. This station values predictability. Alara thought of her friends back on the ship, of the simple cloth in Tikra's hands. She remembered the translation of the music and how the sensors had pulsed. To the alien systems, humans were a flaw or a miracle. She could not tell which one they thought. She could only be the human in front of them. Then let us talk, she said. Let us learn from each other. We will not be a test subject without consent. Tikra regarded her for a long moment. He was slow, not because he was dull, but because he weighed things in a way the station's instruments could measure. Around him, displays recorded every micro-expression, every soft intake of breath. His band of pulses quivered and then settled, though another small flare showed up on a console somewhere in the inner ring. Someone took a note. As they spoke, Alara noticed a door half hidden in a shadowed recess. It had no sign. A faint line of light traced its edge. For a moment she felt the human trait she prized most, curiosity. She did not move toward the door. That would be rude. But she did not take her eyes off it either. When the session ended, Tikra escorted the delegation back to the central gallery. He gave the human gifts a small bow. We will provide hospitality and we will share knowledge, he said. But be mindful, our station keeps records. Some of them are old. They remind us of days when our models were incomplete. Alara walked away holding the sense that something important had shifted. She did not know whether that shift would be good or bad. All she did know was that the station had reacted to her in a way she had not expected. Their pulses had spiked. Their machines had recorded anomalies. Somewhere, in the quiet hum of systems and the glance Tikra spared to a screen, a decision would be made. Later, when she sat alone in the small quarters provided to the delegation, Alara stared at the woven cloth. It lay across her knee like a map that wanted to be read. She thought of the old records Tikra had shown and of the word the translator had given, recognition. She wondered whether recognition belonged to memory or to something deeper, some web of life that connected species across time. It gave her both fear and a strange, stubborn hope. At the end of the first day, as the station dimmed its lights and the corridors settled into a softer cadence, Tikra returned to his private chamber. He looked at the recorder that tracked his pulse and touched the edge of a slate. His fingers trembled, just a little. He spoke not aloud but into the hush of his mind. The human's pulse spiked when she walked in. We must watch. If this truth wakes the old echoes, then our plans will change. We must be ready. Outside, the stars kept their patient watch. Inside the station, machines logged every beat. And on the horizon of both species, something old and quiet began to stir. Alara woke to a soft hum vibrating through the floor of her quarters. The light from the station's corridors slipped through the narrow window. pale as early morning on Earth. She had slept fitfully, her dreams tangled with strange shapes of the station, flickers of alien faces, and the soft rhythm of T-Craw's pulse as recorded by the scanning devices. Something about the station's machinery seemed almost alive, and the memory of that spike from the previous day lingered in her mind. She rose carefully, smoothing her uniform and prepared for the day ahead. Breakfast in the communal area was quiet. Humans were few, and the aliens ate without utensils, consuming thin, nutrient-rich pastes that changed color as they were chewed. Alara took a small portion, mindful of etiquette, but her eyes scanned the room. The alien researchers moved with precision, their motions exact and measured. She noticed the slight twitch of a ridge behind one researcher's ear every time her gaze lingered. Even without understanding the alien language fully, she understood what it meant. They were observing her, recording her responses, studying her presence. The cultural officer, Lieutenant Micah, whispered, "They're still reacting to you." "I know," Alara replied softly. "It's more than curiosity. They can't predict what we do," Micah frowned. "Is that good or bad?" "Both," Alara said. "We'll see." After breakfast, T-Craw requested another meeting. This time, he led the delegation to a large observation deck overlooking the planet below. It was beautiful, green and blue swirls of forests and oceans. The station's sensors projected layers of data over the view, showing energy readings, atmospheric composition, and patterns of life across the surface. T-Craw gestured to the display. "We monitor these systems for changes. Life, energy, weather, all is calculated. We can predict outcomes with great accuracy. And yet," he paused, looking at Alara, "there are anomalies, small, irregular disturbances in the natural order that we cannot fully account for." Alara stepped closer to the projection. "And those anomalies," she said, "do they include humans?" T-Craw's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes, humans. Your species introduces factors that our models cannot fully explain. Not your technology alone, but your decisions, your adaptability, your impulses. You are a variable we have not calculated correctly." Alara's heart lifted slightly. She had always known humans were unpredictable, clever, and capable of sudden ingenuity, but hearing it from an alien who had mastered prediction made it feel real. The meeting turned to questions. T-Craw asked about human society, governance, and the way humans handled uncertainty. Alara answered carefully, using examples that would resonate with logic rather than emotion. She spoke of exploration, adaptation, and the importance of improvisation. She described humans' ability to solve problems with limited resources, to find courage in danger, and to cooperate even when systems failed. T-Craw listened. He did not comment, but the bands of data around him fluttered. He was recording, analyzing, and perhaps learning. Every answer Alara gave caused another microspike in his readings. The staff beside him scribbled notes on their translucent slates, their ridges twitching with tension. When the session ended, Alara and her team were invited to tour the lab bays. She walked slowly, observing. Instruments hummed and spun, analyzing data at speeds impossible to track with the naked eye. Machines measured resonance patterns, behavioral signals, and genetic variations. Some were linked to past records, tracking the development of multiple species across different worlds. Alara realized that the aliens were not only scientists, but archivists of life itself. One lab caught her attention. It was dimmer than the others, with screens projecting waves of light over a single large table. She saw shapes of life forms, not just from the planet below but from distant systems. Their forms were simplified, lines and curves that represented movement, reaction, and behavior. The patterns pulsed, interacting with each other as if the room itself were alive. A junior researcher noticed her interest and spoke softly in a language she did not understand. T-Craw translated. "It is a simulation of behavioral resonance. Species are mapped according to how they respond to stimuli, both internal and external. Humans are difficult to predict. Your data points do not stabilize. Alara bent closer. Difficult to predict how? Your biology creates irregularities, Tikra replied. Your decision-making is not linear. You improvise in ways that cannot be reduced to probabilities. We have cataloged other species for centuries. None behave like humans. Alara smiled faintly. Then I suppose you'll have to learn by observation. Tikra did not answer directly. Instead, he gestured to a nearby console. Lights blinked in irregular patterns. Observation alone is insufficient. We must record, analyze, and model. Yet your presence complicates everything. Even our most advanced systems cannot fully anticipate what you will do next. The human delegation continued the tour, but Alara remained focused on one question. Why invite humans if they disrupted their systems so thoroughly? Later that day, she returned to her quarters, her mind still buzzing. She pulled the woven cloth from her bag and examined the intricate patterns. They reminded her of the resonance simulations she had seen in the lab. Threads of Earth's history and human creativity somehow resonated with the alien systems. She traced the lines with her fingers, feeling a strange connection between the patterns on the cloth and the patterns in the simulation. Lieutenant Micah joined her quietly. "Do you think they planned this?" Alara shook her head. "I don't know. But I think they underestimated us." That evening, Tikra requested a private meeting with her. She followed him through quiet corridors that pulsed with soft light. The station was almost silent now, the hum of machinery the only constant sound. They entered a chamber filled with screens and instruments, the walls glowing faintly. Tikra gestured for Alara to stand before a scanning device. She obeyed, curiosity stronger than caution. The scanner traced her features, her heartbeat, and subtle energy patterns around her. The readings were projected onto a floating display. The bands around Tikra's head pulsed rapidly, a small flare marking each new spike. "You affect our systems," Tikra said quietly, "not with hostility but with unpredictability. Your presence disturbs the flow of our calculations. This is unprecedented." Alara considered her words carefully. "I am human," she said simply. "We do not always follow rules. We adapt. We improvise. Perhaps your systems are not meant to contain everything." Tikra's eyes did not change, but his ridges twitched. "It is possible. We have calculated outcomes for centuries, but your resonance introduces new variables. Your decisions cannot be predicted. Your intuition cannot be modeled." Alara felt a strange sense of pride. Humans had always survived against impossible odds, relying on courage, creativity, and unity. And now, far from Earth, in the presence of a species that had mastered prediction, those same traits were proving their value. Tikra spoke again. "We have been expanding into systems for centuries. We use prediction to avoid conflict, to ensure success. Yet your kind changes outcomes. Even your smallest actions create ripples that we cannot anticipate." Alara nodded. "And what will you do with this knowledge?" The alien did not answer immediately. He gestured to the display where patterns of energy and movement shifted and overlapped. "We will observe. We will learn, but we must also prepare. Your species could disrupt plans not yet formed. Your existence is a challenge." Alara understood the meaning. Humans were not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most technologically advanced, but they were clever, adaptive, and unpredictable. Their creativity was a weapon the aliens could not control, and that weapon was already at work. As she left the chamber, she felt eyes on her pulse, not just Tikra's but the staff of the station. Every movement, every decision was being recorded, yet she did not feel fear. She felt determination. She would continue to learn from them, observe them, and, if necessary, outthink them. Later, in the quiet of her quarters, she wrote notes for her team. She described the systems, the scans, and the simulations. She noted the ways humans could disrupt prediction, improvisation, cooperation under stress, intuition. Every observation was a reminder that her species' greatest strength was not in numbers or machines, but in the spark of creativity that refused to be predicted or contained. Night came and the station settled into a gentle rhythm. Lights dimmed and the hum of machinery softened. Alara looked out at the planet below, green and alive, full of possibilities. Somewhere within that planet's systems, small life forms moved in patterns that might be understood by these aliens someday, but not by humans. Alara closed her eyes for a moment. The pulse of the station, the subtle spikes of T-Kraz systems, the hum of machines, all of it reminded her that she was far from home. Yet she was not afraid. Humans thrived in uncertainty. Humans turned unpredictability into advantage. Humans survived by thinking, by feeling, by acting when others hesitated. And here, in this alien station, that advantage was already showing itself. The day ended with Tikra recording his final notes for the cycle. His band pulsed once, twice, then settled. "The human continues to affect the station," he murmured. "Every action, every thought, every glance. We must observe carefully. The truth of their kind is closing in, and our models may not withstand it." Outside, stars rotated slowly, indifferent to species and civilizations. Inside, life continued, alien and human, observing each other, learning, adapting. And somewhere in the quiet, Alara smiled. She understood something essential. Humans had always been the kind of species that changed everything just by existing. And here, millions of kilometers from home, that truth was being tested. Her pulse was steady, her mind sharp, her presence a small disturbance in an otherwise perfect system. It was enough to start a ripple. And ripples, she knew, could become waves. The next morning, Alara woke to the quiet hum of the station. The light was softer now, as if the station itself had adjusted to her presence overnight. She dressed carefully and checked the small translator on her wrist. Every pulse, every fluctuation in the alien systems from the day before had been recorded. She could feel it in the corridors, a subtle tension that vibrated through the walls. The aliens were watching, waiting, analyzing. But for the first time, she felt as though she was watching back. Tikra requested her presence for another meeting, and this time it was in the main research hub, a vast room filled with instruments, screens, and projections of moving life forms. The room seemed alive, humming with quiet energy, and Alara noticed that the air felt denser here, as though it held knowledge itself. Tikra gestured for her to stand at the center of a circular platform, surrounded by holographic displays showing simulations of planetary systems, energy flows, and living organisms. "We monitor everything," he said, his voice calm but precise. "We predict outcomes. We model species, and yet your presence disrupts our predictions. You are a variable that we cannot calculate." Alara looked at the simulations. Patterns shifted in real time, changing as she moved. The projections were sophisticated, displaying every possible outcome the aliens could imagine. Yet with every step she took, the patterns bent and twisted, small disturbances spreading through the system. "Your species," Tikra continued, "acts unpredictably. Even with advanced calculation, we cannot fully anticipate your choices. Your biology, your intuition, your decision-making process, these introduce variations that confound our models." Alara felt a small thrill. This was exactly what she had hoped for. Humans were not the strongest, they were not the fastest, but they had an edge no one else did: creativity, adaptability, and unpredictability. Here, that edge was not theoretical, it was real. "I understand," she said, "and you wish to know how we work." "Yes," Tikra replied. "We observe, we record, but observing alone is insufficient. We need to understand. We must learn whether your species will conform to patterns or continue to defy them." Alara nodded. "Then let us begin." For the next several hours she walked through the lab bays. interacting with instruments, simulations, and alien systems. She touched screens, adjusted settings, and even moved objects in the simulations, watching how the alien software responded. With every action, she noticed the subtle flares of pulses from T-Kra's console. The alien's systems were precise, meticulous, and absolute, but she introduced small, unplanned changes, ripples that the models could not account for. A junior researcher whose ridges twitched nervously at her presence leaned toward T-Kra. The anomalies are increasing. The variable is growing more complex. T-Kra did not answer immediately. His eyes followed Alara as she moved to a simulation of a small forested planet. She altered one sequence of events, introducing a species migration pattern that had not been predicted. The simulation shivered, patterns of energy and life twisting in unexpected ways. The station's sensors flared, small lights flickering in the ceiling and along the walls. "You see," T-Kra said quietly, "even small actions create changes we cannot foresee. Your species alters outcomes simply by acting." Alara smiled faintly. "That is what humans do. We adapt, we improvise, we find solutions when others cannot." The meeting continued with more simulations, each more complex than the last. They tested social systems, ecological networks, and energy flows. In every case, Alara introduced subtle, unpredictable variations. A species moved slightly differently. A resource was allocated unexpectedly. A response occurred earlier or later than predicted. Each action caused a cascade through the simulations, small but significant disturbances that the alien systems flagged immediately. By mid-cycle, T-Kra's band of pulses was moving rapidly, almost jittering with each new anomaly. He gestured for Alara to pause. "Your impact is considerable," he said. "We have observed many species, but none exhibit this degree of unpredictability. Even when constrained by resources or environment, you find ways to disrupt outcomes." Alara looked around the hub. "Then perhaps your models are too rigid. Perhaps predictability is not the ultimate goal." T-Kra considered her words. His ridges shifted slowly. "Rigidity ensures control. Predictability minimizes risk. But your species, introduces flexibility. You find paths we cannot foresee. It is a strength, yes, but also a potential danger. A species that cannot be predicted may succeed or fail in ways we cannot measure." She nodded. "But that is life. Uncertainty is part of survival, and humans embrace it." The aliens did not answer directly, but the hum of the machines seemed to shift, as if acknowledging her point. The simulations flickered, recalculating in ways that suggested they were learning. T-Kra watched intently, his expression calm but his pulse irregular. He recorded every detail, noting anomalies and variations that Alara could not see. Later, as the human delegation walked through the observation corridors, Alara noticed another subtle change. Staff members who had been cautious before now paused more often to watch her, their movements slightly slower, their gestures less precise. Even the junior researchers seemed unsure how to respond. It was as if her presence was teaching them hesitation, the small human pause that introduced unpredictability. Lieutenant Micah whispered, "Do you think they're learning from you?" "I know they are," Alara replied. "Every species learns, but humans don't just learn, they improvise. That is the difference." As the day progressed, Alara discovered an unexpected opportunity. One lab contained simulations of interstellar travel, showing predicted paths of ships, energy consumption, and resource allocation. The aliens had mapped entire fleets, calculated probabilities of success, and predicted responses of potential adversaries. Yet even in this tightly controlled simulation, her presence caused minor, unpredictable disruptions. She walked along the interface, tapping sequences at random intervals. Small deviations appeared in projected paths, energy outputs, and timing of maneuvers. Every time a pattern adjusted, A subtle flare appeared on T-Craw's console. The aliens had never encountered a variable like this. T-Craw spoke quietly. Your species introduces variables not only in behavior but in planning. Even simple choices create outcomes we cannot predict. Alara smiled. That is what humans have always done. We survive by finding solutions, even in impossible situations. We adapt when others fail to anticipate the future. The observation deck later that evening offered a quiet view of the planet below. Forests and oceans spread in rolling patterns, alive with movement the aliens tracked meticulously. T-Craw approached silently. We observe your species. We catalog every action, every choice. Yet your presence challenges our understanding. Humans do not conform to expected patterns. Alara turned to him. And yet you invited us. Why? To study or to test? T-Craw did not answer immediately. He gestured to the planet below. To observe is always to test. To understand is always to learn. Your species has the potential to disrupt not only predictions but entire plans. This is a truth we must face. We cannot ignore it. And perhaps, he added, we cannot contain it. Alara felt a surge of determination. Humans were small, far from their home world, surrounded by beings who had perfected prediction and control. Yet here she was, introducing change with every movement, every thought, every decision. Humanity's unpredictability was no weakness. It was a weapon, subtle but powerful. Back in her quarters, she examined the woven cloth again. The patterns on Earth and the patterns in the alien simulations began to feel connected. Threads of history, instinct, and improvisation wove through both, linking human ingenuity to outcomes that even the most advanced alien systems could not calculate. She traced the lines with her fingers, imagining the ripple effect of small choices, the chain of events that could unfold when creativity met precision. Later, she reviewed notes from the day. Every anomaly, every unexpected outcome, was a reminder that humans had survived for millennia not by strength alone, but by adaptability, intuition, and cooperation. And now, far from Earth, these traits were influencing an entire alien station. T-Craw's private moments were filled with similar reflection. He recorded detailed logs of the day's observations, noting spikes in his own pulse, fluctuations in readings, and subtle deviations in simulated outcomes. His species had believed control and prediction were absolute, yet here was proof that some variables could not be reduced. Humans introduced chaos in the most elegant way. They changed probabilities without aggression, without force, simply by existing and acting. The night ended with the station quiet, lights dimmed and machinery humming softly. Alara lay awake, thinking of Earth, of her crew, of the small ways humans had always turned disadvantage into opportunity. She felt a steady pulse of confidence. They had been underestimated, as humans often were. Yet in this station, millions of kilometers from home, that underestimation worked in their favor. Somewhere deep within the simulation labs, the lights on T-Craw's consoles flickered once more. A small ripple passed through the projection of energy flows and species interactions. The aliens watched, noted, and recorded. The anomaly continued, growing steadily, a quiet, unyielding proof that unpredictability could not be controlled. Alara's pulse remained steady. She had discovered a simple truth. Humans did not follow patterns, they created them. And in doing so, they changed everything around them, even an entire alien station built to predict the universe. Outside, the stars kept their watch, ancient and unchanging. Inside, life adapted. One species learned, another disrupted. And in that delicate balance, the first threads of an unexpected truth began to emerge, a truth that would change the aliens' understanding of the galaxy forever. The station was quiet when Alara woke. The soft hum of machines pulsed through the corridors, almost as if it had grown accustomed to her presence. She felt no fear, only determination. Days had passed since her arrival, and already she could see the subtle ways humans disrupted the aliens' predictions. Every movement, every decision, every small choice she had made had created ripples across the station's simulations. Now it was time to act deliberately. T-Cross summoned her to the main observation deck, where holographic displays shimmered with planetary maps, species simulations, and energy projections. He did not speak immediately. His eyes, larger than humans, followed her as she entered the room. The bands of data around his head pulsed unevenly, responding to her heartbeat, her movements, her very presence. "You have caused disruptions beyond expectation," he said quietly. "Our simulations adjust with difficulty. Every small choice you make spreads through the models." "We cannot fully predict your next action," Alara nodded. "That is the human way. We adapt, we improvise, we change outcomes simply by existing." T-Cross studied her, and for a moment his expression was unreadable. Then he gestured to a large simulation at the center of the room. A small fleet of alien ships moved along precise paths, energy streams flowing like water in perfect lines. "This is our current operation plan," he said. "We expand carefully, minimizing risk. Your presence here has introduced variables into our systems. We must decide whether to contain or observe further." Alara's pulse quickened, but not with fear. She understood the stakes. The aliens had technology far beyond humanity, but technology alone was insufficient to predict human ingenuity. "Containment would fail," she said simply. "You cannot control humans, you can only adapt to them." Tikra considered this, his ridges shifting subtly. "We have observed, we have recorded, but adaptation requires time, and we have limited cycles to act." Alara stepped closer to the simulation. "Then let me show you the human advantage." She began interacting with the holographic display, introducing small, unexpected adjustments. One ship altered its trajectory slightly. Energy distribution changed. Resource allocation shifted in ways not anticipated by the simulation. Each adjustment created a ripple, spreading unpredictably through the fleet's paths. The displays shimmered as the patterns refused to stabilize. Around her, the aliens watched closely. Tikra's pulse band flickered rapidly, and other staff members scribbled notes on their translucent slates. Their systems attempted to recalculate, but every new adjustment she made disrupted the models further. The precision the aliens valued was now compromised, not by aggression but by creativity. "You see," Alara said, "humans do not follow patterns. We adapt to the situation and we find solutions when none exist. We think in ways that cannot be reduced to numbers alone." Tikra's voice was quiet. "Your impact is greater than anticipated. You do not merely affect simulations, you alter outcomes. You change possibilities." Alara smiled. "That is the truth of humanity. We survive because we do not obey expectation. We do not follow predictability. We create it." The aliens continued to record, their systems straining to adjust. Even the most advanced predictive models failed to account for the subtle ripple effect of human improvisation. Ships altered courses in unexpected ways. Energy flows shifted. Resource distributions changed, all because of small, deliberate interventions from a single human being. Tikra moved to a console and tapped a sequence. "Your actions cannot be ignored. Our expansion plans depend on predictable variables. You have made these variables unstable. Yet you are only one human. We must consider the implications of your species as a whole." Alara's heart raced. "Then observe. Learn. Humans are not a threat to be contained. We are a species that changes the universe simply by being alive. And if you underestimate us, it will cost you more than you think." For hours, she continued to manipulate the simulations. The alien systems recalculated endlessly, attempting to adapt to her choices, but every calculation faltered. The hum of machinery grew louder, almost agitated, as if the station itself struggled to contain the new pattern. Every decision she made highlighted the unpredictable, creative nature of human thought. Outside the observation deck, the stars rotated slowly, indifferent to the conflicts and discoveries inside. But within the station, life shifted. Tikra and his team realized that control was an illusion when facing humans. Predictive models, no matter how advanced, could not fully anticipate intuition, improvisation, or courage. Finally, Tikra gestured for her to pause. "Enough," he said. His voice was calm, but his pulse was elevated. "You have demonstrated the nature of your species. Humans cannot be modeled completely. You change outcomes not through force but through ingenuity." Alara nodded. "That is the strength of humanity, not strength in numbers, not in machines, but in the mind and the heart. We survive because we can see possibilities where others see only rules." Tikra studied her, silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Your species forces us to reconsider our approach. Expansion, prediction, control, all must be adapted. You have shown us that flexibility is not weakness. Unpredictability is not danger but an advantage. Your kind is remarkable." Alara allowed herself a small smile. "And that is why humans have always survived, even when others believed we could not." The station grew quiet again. The simulations continued, but now with a subtle change. The models incorporated unpredictability, allowing for variation. The aliens had begun to learn from her. They would not fully understand humans, perhaps, but they would respect the power of improvisation, creativity, and intuition. Later, in her quarters, Alara reviewed the day's recordings. Every spike, every anomaly, every ripple through the alien systems had been noted. She thought of Earth, of the countless generations of humans who had survived, adapted, and thrived against impossible odds. That same spirit had guided her through the station. It was not strength or speed that defined her species. It was flexibility, courage, and the ability to act when others hesitated. The next day, Tikra called another meeting. This time, the atmosphere was different. There was no tension, only quiet curiosity. The aliens had adjusted their expectations. They had recorded, observed, and begun to incorporate lessons from the human approach. "You have changed our perspective," Tikra said. "Humans cannot be predicted fully, yet your influence shows a path to cooperation rather than conflict. Perhaps, in working together, we can achieve outcomes neither species could accomplish alone." Alara nodded. "That is always the way forward. Humans survive and we thrive not by domination but by understanding and adaptation. The universe is large, full of challenges. Together, we can face them better than apart." Tikra studied her, pulse now steady but still responsive. "You have proven a truth we cannot ignore. Unpredictability is a strength. Innovation, courage, and adaptation are more powerful than rigid control. Your species embodies these qualities fully." Alara smiled. "And humans always will. That is who we are." In the following days, the station became a place of quiet collaboration. Humans and aliens worked together on simulations, exploring possibilities that neither could have anticipated alone. Humans introduced creative solutions, improvising where calculations failed. Aliens provided precise data, advanced tools, and predictive guidance. Each species learned from the other, combining strength and flexibility. Alara noticed subtle changes in Tikra and his staff. The initial spikes, the rapid pulses of anxiety and surprise, had stabilized. Respect and curiosity replaced tension. They began to anticipate not only human behavior, but also the potential of humans to teach, innovate, and inspire. The station itself seemed to adjust, humming with quiet energy that reflected collaboration rather than rigid control. One evening, Alara stood at the observation deck, looking out at the planet below. The oceans shimmered, forests moved with life, and clouds swirled in patterns both predictable and chaotic. She thought of the aliens, of their advanced technology, and of the ways humans had challenged every expectation. Her pulse was steady, her mind alert, her spirit strong. Tikra approached quietly. "You have taught us a lesson," he said. "Your species is a reminder that the universe cannot be reduced to patterns alone. Flexibility, courage, and creativity are forces we must respect. Humans change everything simply by existing and acting." Alara nodded. "And humans always will. That is the essence of who we are." The stars outside rotated slowly, ancient and unchanging, yet within the station, life had shifted. Humans had not conquered with force, nor had they dominated through technology alone. They had succeeded by doing what they always did best: thinking, adapting, and acting in ways that could not be predicted. For Tikra and his species, a new understanding had emerged. Humans were not a threat to be contained or controlled. They were a force of creativity and ingenuity, capable of changing outcomes without aggression, capable of introducing hope and flexibility into even the most rigid systems. And for Alara, the lesson was simple: humanity's greatest strength was themselves. Their courage, their adaptability, and their ability to see possibilities where others saw only limits would continue to define them across the stars. As she left the observation deck, Alara felt a quiet satisfaction. The aliens had learned, the station had adapted, and humans had proven once again that they were more than numbers, patterns, or predictions. They were a species capable of shaping the future simply by acting, learning, and surviving. Somewhere deep in the simulation labs, the systems hummed steadily. The pulses of past disruptions had stabilized, but the memory of human intervention remained. Every future calculation would carry the mark of ingenuity, unpredictability, and courage. Humanity's presence had been felt, and their influence would ripple across the galaxy, quiet but unyielding. Alara paused at a window, looking at the stars. She thought of Earth, of the journey that had brought humans here, and of the countless possibilities ahead. Humans were small in the vastness of space, but their spirit was unstoppable. They would explore, adapt, and thrive, not because they were strongest, but because they dared to act when others hesitated. Tikra watched her silently. "Perhaps," he murmured, "humans are the lesson we did not know we needed." Alara smiled softly. "And we will keep proving it every step of the way." The station settled into a new rhythm, one of cooperation, respect, and mutual understanding. Humanity had shown that unpredictability could be a strength, that adaptation could overcome calculation, and that courage and creativity could change the course of even the most precise systems. Outside, the stars continued their eternal motion. Inside, humans and aliens worked side by side, learning from one another. And somewhere in that quiet, unassuming way, humanity's pulse had spread through the station, steady, strong, and full of possibility. Alara closed her eyes for a moment. She felt the steady rhythm of life, of systems and species intertwined. The galaxy was vast, full of unknowns, but humanity's place within it was certain. They would continue to surprise, to adapt, and to thrive. And wherever humans went, the truth of their strength, their ingenuity, courage, and unpredictability would always follow. It was not just survival. It was a statement. Humanity would endure. Humanity would thrive. Humanity would shape the future, one choice, one act, one pulse at a time. And the universe, for the first time, took notice. The alien's pulse spiked when the human walked in, truth closing in.